Okay, so let's move on to the tips for writing a college essay. I told you about the qualities. Let's go ahead with the tips. Number one is the opening paragraph or the hook. Like I said, it's the hook. You got to hook the admissions officer. If you don't get the attention of the admissions officer within the first 5 seconds, you're not going to get through the essay. It's going to, that's it. Yes, there are 3 parts to an essay, which is the beginning, the opening paragraph, the body, and the conclusion. But I tell my students that 90% of the time, it's the opening paragraph or the hook, or even the first 2 sentences of the essay is 70% of whether your selection, whether you're going to get selected or not. I know I'm throwing some statistics at you, but that's what it is, right? You hold the attention with your opening paragraph, and more than your opening paragraph, the very first line that you write. Got it? So that's extremely important. Next is, this is where I see students writing general things. They don't get specific. They are like just about rambling general stuff, not going deep into it, right? So if it's the rat temple, then you go deep into what is it about the rat temple that moved you so much that it became a great experience. Why? Right? Get super specific. Use like sensory details. How is the smell in the rat temple? Like all that details. I tell my students that it's a written format, but the admission officer needs to be able to visualize what you're trying to convey, right? They need to be like transformed to the world that you're trying to get them in. If you fail to do that, your essay is not doing the job, right? So it's got to be specific. It's got to have the sensory details and everything in it. Got it? And I tell them to dramatize the turning point, right? So there is going to be a moment in their essay, a turning point where they need to flush it out with as much details and as much as details as possible, so that the admission officer is truly moved, right? So flush it out with details, right? My student wrote about how she played a stock game in elementary school and she just took it casually. I'm going to win. And boom, she started losing. Her calculation was wrong, right? And there was a moment in time where it caused her distress, right? And I insisted that she dramatize that part of it, right? That's super important, is dramatizing or enhancing that one moment in your college essay, right? That's what it is. And also another thing I want to tell you, that college essay is not an English paper. If you think that an English teacher or somebody can help you, I mean, I'm not against English teachers or anything, but please get off the myth that it's an English paper, right? It's not an English paper. It's a personal statement, right? And that's important. Any question about dramatizing the essay? I mean, it's not like the students don't want to write an essay. It's just the sheer amount of pressure or the stakes, right? The stakes are extremely, extremely high. The expectancy is so high, right? It's so much pressure. It's a make or break. And with that pressure, how do you expect a 17-year-old to like focus and perform without guidance, right? I truly feel like this is the hardest part. My son himself didn't get the best essay out. Although he got into extremely good schools, now when I look back, I wasn't a counselor back then. I didn't have the kind of resources back then when he was applying. And now when I look back, I'm like, his essay, get to the point. He wouldn't just get to the point to the third or the fourth paragraph, right? He's like so descriptive, get to the point. Whereas my younger son is a beautiful writer. He's like an emotional writer. He in fact proofreads my emails and tells me how to reword certain things. So each student is different. They have their strengths and weaknesses, right? But this college essay is a completely different beast. Okay. Next is keeping up the pace. Trust me, it's got to be a Top Gun movie. Okay, it cannot be a Manoj Night Shyamalan. I'm in the dark, so slow. The lighting is bad. Which one would you want to go to, right? Think of it from an admission officer perspective. He has to move through so many essays. Do you want to bore him to death? Or do you want to have a Top Gun full of action, full of twists and turns, and it has a happy ending? Tom Cruise won, got over the enemy. Give that experience to the admissions officer. Got it? Keep it fast. I mean, don't just get to the point. Like I said, my son wouldn't get to the point, right? That was not his intention, but that's how the essay was. And this is another area that I see students struggling is they get stuck on a point. They don't know how to transition and get out of it, right? Yes, and also they overwrite about a topic. The CommonApp essay is about you, your values. Your values should be shining through, right? And the biggest thing that I ask them not to do is write about a mentor. It's the easiest topic. You want to write about something. But what happens is you get so focused about writing about others that you don't write about yourself. Your values get buried in. I know you can argue, but this is my easiest strategy, right? You can overwrite about a topic or about a person and your personality gets buried into it. Got it? So any questions about keeping up the pace? Type it in. Okay, next is strong vocabulary, right? This is another area where students struggle. It's not like they don't have a good vocabulary. They do have it. They just don't know how to use it. They use like generic, banal words. Banal is a good vocabulary word, right? It's a very generic word. And it almost looks like a middle school paper because they like to see some amount of strong vocabulary, not some amount, pretty good strong. It's not like you got to open a dictionary and write the hardest word in the dictionary. No, in that context, it has to show. The way you show maturity is through your vocabulary. Colleges want well-learned, well-rounded students. And how are you going to give them? Through your vocabulary. Like every admission officer, they don't let it out, but they have a rubric when they look over the essay, right? They all have a rubric. They just don't come out with it, right? They rate essays. So a strong vocabulary needs to be displayed as well. Last but not the least, conclusion. How do you make it smashing? How do you give a Top Gun end where the protagonist wins? Here, you're winning. You need acceptance to the college. How are you going to do that? It's the conclusion, right? And I teach my students to write a circular method where they go back to the hook and write about it. And the conclusion needs to throw a little bit of a lot of your values and why you need to be picked in the college. You don't say, hey, I need to be picked because of this, this, and this. It's got to be subtle. There's nothing direct in this world, right? It's all in the subtlety. The conclusion needs to bring it all together. And the essays that I've reviewed, there is no conclusion. I'm like, is this an end or am I expecting something to end? It needs to signal that you're ending the essay. But at the same time, it should not be like, to conclude, I want to say, you don't use those words, but still it needs to transition smoothly to end it. And the admission officer said, oh, 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 that's it. Oh, okay. And click the admitted one. Okay. Any questions about the tips to write a winning essay, please type away. You'll get an opportunity to answer. So are you with me? How are we doing so far? Are you ready to write an essay? I'm just